Welcome to Stoke Meter, and we are so pleased to have Nathan Ogden. Nathan Ogden is one of the most inspirational individuals that you'll ever meet, and you'll see why in a minute. But he is the CEO of Share the Hope, and we'll also get into that. And Nathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here. I think this will be a lot of fun.
Absolutely right. Matter of fact, the first time I ever met you was at it was a conference where a lot of churches got together, and you were the keynote speaker, and you're nationally known. I thought, how did they get this guy?
I live 2 miles down the road.
Oh,
it was proximity.
Proximity factor. Well, the neat thing is, I remember you handing me your card, and I still have that card. And
cool.
Yeah. And I just remember reading the back of that. I don't know if you could say it says, take control of your fears and move from paralysis to progress. And I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind telling the audience why that is such a big deal right now. And they don't know anything about you right now unless they've read about you. But can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, no, I number one, I think progress in anybody's life is what makes your life. You know, it's always finding a way to continually be moving forward, whatever direction that takes you, but that you're always moving forward. And I think so many times in our lives, we have big things happen that stop us in our tracks. And you know, it may feel like someone punched you in the gut and you don't know what to do or where to go. And that's when you've got to make decisions quickly as to what you're going to do. Are you going to stay where you're at for a while? Or are you going to start trying to get traction and move forward the best that you can? And there's many people who just, they wait and they're frozen. And I like to use it because I am paralyzed, but that a lot of us are mentally paralyzed. And we get stuck in this rut. We get stuck in our comfort zones, and we don't move and live the kind of life that we really want to live. And that's inside of us, our potential. And we hold ourselves back. It's not everyone else around you that holds you back in life. Typically, it's not your boss that's keeping you from a promotion. It's not as an athlete that your coach is the only one that's stopping you from getting there, or other players. It's typically yourself. And are you willing to put in the work to get to where you want to be? Are you willing to sacrifice enough to see your dreams come true? And so to make it more brief, I grew up in Boise. I love the mountains. I love camping and hiking and fishing and hunting. I love sports. I always was doing a sport. I ended up playing soccer in college at Rick's College for a little bit.
Nice.
And so I did a lot of different sports throughout high school, and I love being active. I love doing that kind of stuff. And so when I went to Rick's College for my second year, after I served a 2-year mission for the LDS Church, I came back, and you know, at that point, you're kind of like, I was 21 years old, and you're starting to look more for a spouse and a career. And I did what any person, in particular guys, do when you go to a class for the first time and you sit down. What is it that you do? Like, what would you guys do in college back there in Arizona State?
Oh man, I was searching.
Searching for what?
You scope the scenery, you see what's
Yeah.
what kind of target rich environment am I in?
It's an unfortunate thing. Yes, I was definitely looking for my significant other.
Exactly. So that's what I did. And I think that's what most people do is you, even in high school, you sit down and I'm looking around the room. Who's the cutest girl in here? And do I stand a shot at her? And I sat down, I looked around, there was one girl and she was across the room and she was talking to a bunch of boys. And I thought, that's the girl. That's the girl in this room. And I kind of shot myself down and I thought, that's who I'd like to get to know. But she's too popular. She's too cute. She's not going to look at me and want to do anything. And luckily, there ended up being a seating chart in that class. Like that totally worked to my benefit. And so we ended up sitting next to each other. And so I got to know her, but she always had a boyfriend. And between boyfriends, right, during Christmas time, I took her out on one date and then I went home for Christmas. And by the time we got back together, she had another boyfriend. So I've been going on a whole bunch of first dates that year I came back off a mission. And at the end of the year, there's a month left in school. And I found a way, even though she had a boyfriend, that I could get some private time with her. Because I lived in Boise and she had a sister who lived in Meridian right next to Boise. And so I said, hey, Heather, I'm going to be driving home this weekend. Do you want to ride? And I'll drop you off at your sister's house. So then I get this other guy's girlfriend in my truck for 4.5 hours, 2 ways, to work my magic. So I'd done that a couple times that spring. And then so we were back in Boise. I brought her back to her sister's house and we were going back to school the next day. And I called her up and she said, hey, you want to go for a drive? And we just kind of went on a little drive together, not really a date or anything, but and as I was dropping her off at her sister's house, we're sitting in the driveway and I looked over and I said, Heather, I've been on a lot of first dates this last year, but you are the only girl I want to go on a second date with. I thought that was a pretty good pickup line. Like that should work. That should be in a movie somewhere. And so I said, here's what I think should happen. Now, granted, I was very shy. I did not like, especially around girls, like this is not who I am. But I said, when we go back to school tomorrow, I think you should dump your boyfriend. And we should go on some dates and see if there's something there, because I graduate in a month and I'm moving on and you'll still be here. So we need to figure this out. And she did not say yes, but she didn't say no. She just kind of looked at me and, all right. And she got out of the car. But I learned an important lesson that day. If there's something that you really want, you got to fight for it and you got to stand up for it. So we went back to school that next day. A week later, she had dumped her boyfriend. We dated seriously for 1 month. We were engaged for 1 month and I've been married 24 years now.
Oh, fantastic.
So it works. I've got daughters now that I would say, no, don't get near that guy who says that, but it worked for us. And so I've got an amazing wife, Heather, and she's an extraordinary woman and mother and spouse and just always thinking of others. That's who you should have on here, not me. She's the amazing one in our relationship. But so we'd been married for 4.5 years. I was 26 years old. We had 2 little kids, a little girl who was 2 years old named Senia, and a little boy who was just about to turn 1 named Kyler. And I'd graduated college, had a degree. My career was taking off. We bought our first home. You know, I had a black lab. I mean, everything that you kind of think you would want at 26 years old, we had it. And we had a really good life. And we went to her parents' house. She's from Bend, Oregon, for Christmas that winter. And I love to go snow skiing. And And I went with her younger brother up to Mount Bachelor in Bend, Oregon to go snow skiing 3 days before Christmas. And while we're up there on the hill, we're coming down on our last run, and we came around onto a run that we hadn't been on, and there were 2 big jumps on it. And I love going off jumps. I don't do backflips and 360s, but I love flying through the air. So after the second jump, there were about 25 to 30 people that were watching as people came off that jump. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And my brother-in-law skied down, and he was waiting in the group watching. And it was my turn, and I jumped, flipped my skis around. Do either of you guys ski?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay, do you snowboard?
Yep.
Okay, that's not a real sport. But right now. So I start skiing down to the first jump, and I hit it, and it's kind of more of a tabletop jump that goes up, it flattens off for a while, and then back the other side. I didn't know that, and I didn't hit it hard enough. So I went up and I slapped down on top of the jump, and I went down the other side. So I'm coming up on the second jump, and it's lightly snowing. I can't see real clearly. And then my confidence in my abilities started to turn to cockiness, because now there's 30 people there watching you.
Right.
And so because I'd never hit this jump, I knew it was a big jump. Instead of being cautious, I tucked in tight and went straight into the middle of this jump.
Wow.
And I knew instantly when I hit that jump that I was in trouble.
Oh.
Because instead of shooting you out and up like a jump should, I went almost straight up in the air.
Oh, a kicker, like a kicker.
30 feet into the air. Now, that wasn't what I said. I knew I went high. This is what the people said, how high I got. I remember every bit of this. I never blacked out or anything, but I remember going up, and I slowly rotated backwards. Like, I can still visualize the clouds in my mind right now. And I came down, and I landed on my neck, and my body collapsed down on top of me. My poles and ski, everything went flying, even my hat. And I ended up in this fetal position on the ski run. And my first thought was, I look like such an idiot. I got to get up. And I quickly tried to get up, and all I could do was move my left elbow, and it fell back down to the snow. And I thought, it's all right, knocked the wind out of myself, no big deal. And so I waited a few moments, and I tried to get up again, and I could only move that elbow half as high. And I remember this very vividly, in that kind of fetal position, looking down at my legs. And right then there was this burning pain that began throughout my whole body. And it felt like I was on fire. And it was getting harder and harder for me to breathe. And I remember looking at my leg thinking, move. Why aren't you moving? Like, my whole life, I've fallen down, I've wrecked in all different sports and bike riding, whatever it is, and I always get up. It may hurt, but I get up. Why can't I get up?
Right.
And I couldn't figure that out. Why isn't my body working? And I didn't realize it, but when I landed on my neck, I shattered my C7 vertebrae at the bottom of your neck, and it exploded and instantly paralyzed me. But I still, even when they got me back to the hospital and everything, I still thinking, I just traumatized my body. Give it a day, maybe 2, I'll be walking around, no big deal. I'll be fine for Christmas. But no, that obviously is a major gut punch.
Right.
In your
life. Right.
3 days later, when I remember, I guess I was awake. My wife said I was through Christmas, but they had me on some good drugs. So I don't remember anything for a few days. But when I woke up and I saw that I was in a halo, I had a ventilator breathing for me, all these tubes and wires, it was a realization that, oh crap,
yeah,
this is serious, and I may never walk again. But luckily I've got an amazing wife, and we knew, even though I couldn't, at that point, I couldn't even talk to her because you got a machine breathing for you.
Wow.
But I knew we would work together, and that I knew that I would walk again. I may not be running around the mountains like I used to, but I will walk again.
Right.
And that was kind of the first big hit in our marriage, in my life, that I didn't know how to handle it because I couldn't get up and physically fix it. And I think as men, a lot of times that's what we are. We're fixers. Like, we get up and it's okay if it hurts, but I can still get it done, whether it's sports or whether it's work or doing anything. You can just muscle your way through it. And
Right.
now I couldn't do that. That was hard.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm just wondering, what were some of the thoughts? I can't imagine. I remember breaking some bones and collarbones. Actually, Gary was there for one of those bones, and it's just a helpless feeling. And I'm just wondering how, and just looking at Gary, you could tell he's a nurse. He's a head nurse, and so he knows all this stuff too. But how did you overcome a lot of those debilitating thoughts? You knew you were going to walk, and you knew that it was in you to walk, but how did you overcome that initial shock and the feeling sorry for yourself and all those other things that I'm sure you probably came into a million times more than I ever did with any of my injuries?
I think at first it was survival. Like, for a while, for a few months, I was just trying to survive because I'd have different surgeries, like a lung would collapse, and you're just trying to, I got to live first. And yes, you do have all these thoughts going through your mind. I was continually thinking of, how am I going to provide for our family? Am I even going to be a good father? And I remember very vividly within those first few weeks, just thinking of all these things of, is it going to be better if I just pass away now? So my kids have a dad that can run around and play sports with them and teach them how to do all this stuff. Is it going to be better if my wife has a spouse that's not possibly laying in a bed the rest of his life and can't earn the money that they need to survive, can't, in a lot of personal ways, it's like, you can't be romantic with your wife the way you used to be able to. You can't come up and just pick her up and give her a hug and help take out the trash. There's just so many little things in our lives that we take for granted that all of a sudden may be completely gone.
Yeah.
And I don't have a great answer of how I get through that, other than I never give up hope. I never give up hope that it'll either get the way I want it to be, or I'll find a different path to be happy with it and to be satisfied with where I'm at. Because even today, I struggle all the time when how do you put that? So like right now it's hunting season, and I grew up hunting with my dad. Yeah. And so I take my kids out and I'm trying to teach them how to hunt, and we've had good success. The kids have been able to get things, but it's a chore because I struggle with, I get to take them up there and I'm like, all right, guys, here's what the mountains look like. Here's where the trails, this is what you're going to have to do. And good luck. I've got a walkie-talkie. Hopefully I can hear you, and good luck. And I don't get to get out and walk up that trail and look over the next horizon with them. Right. And that's very difficult for me. And so I have to quickly try and shift my focus onto what can I do? Mm-hmm. And so like, for instance, a few weeks ago, I was out with one of my youngest daughters, and I was able to drop her off on some mountains. And I'm like, all right, you guys hike through these canyons. And then I leave them and I start driving around everywhere trying to find more animals. And I was able to actually find a nice buck, came back, radioed them. They came down, got in the truck. We drove back over. I told them how to find it. They went up and they shot it. So it's like I did everything I could and I was able to be a part of it. But man, I'd love to have been right by your side when it happens. But we all deal with that. So that's not just something that's with me. When we're growing up, you always have things in your mind that you envision that you want to do, and you envision it a certain way. And then when life starts to happen, we realize that that's not going to be the way we wanted it. So like Maurice, you probably thought you'd have hair. You don't. So you got to deal with it, and you accept it and you make the best you can of it. But it doesn't mean it still doesn't bother you, but you gotta get past it.
I love it. I love it.
Hey Nathan, can you just a quick question? Like I said, I'm in healthcare, and I see a lot of people. Basically, I'm more in the trauma and emergency department side of things. But one thing that I always like to, when I meet people down the road a little bit and see how they've progressed or where they're at, can you give me an example of a person or something that you remember that just made a difference when you were going through that situation, and why did it mean so much to you?
That's good. That's a good question. And number one, thank you, because it's people like you and your careers that help people like me survive and be able to do the things that I do. So I really appreciate the medical side of things, and caregivers are tremendous, whatever role that caregiver steps into.
Well, thank you.
There's a man, I got a lot of like negative experiences in the time in the hospitals, and people I'm like, you should not be in here. You shouldn't have this job. But there are definitely many that really made a big difference. And I just to give one example would be well, two. I had when I was in more of the therapy side of things, and I was in the Elks Hospital here in Boise area, a rehab hospital. And I remember one of my caregivers, or not caregivers, one of my therapists. Can't remember if he was occupational therapist. I can't remember which therapist he was, but he would come in with a whole plan of what he was going to do that day with me. And I'd start sharing with him, kind of how I felt or what was on my mind. And he would just completely shift everything that he had planned and say, all right, well, then let's take care of that. And he would listen to me. And I think that on a medical side of stuff is one of the biggest things that someone can do, is just really listen to what I'm saying. Because I'm not making it up. Like I'm not just, hey, you know what? My shoulder's really killing me because I think it'd be a fun topic. No, it really hurts. And so I loved that about him, and that stood out. And I actually ran into him a couple of weeks ago. It'd been years and years since I'd seen him. And I made a point to tell him that. I'm like, I really appreciated the way you helped me and took care of me. You tell that he really cared. The other was my neurosurgeon. Actually, neurosurgeons are their time is very well kept, in the matter that it's hard to get their attention and what you need, other than the time they have allotted to you. And it was Dr. Jutsi here in Boise. He did, well, we haven't got to this point, but after my first, let me get to your answer in just a second. But
This is huge.
Yeah.
Well, I'll finish that real quick. But he was one of my neurosurgeons with the neck break. And afterwards, after I was able to go back home after that surgery, I was having some complications one night, and it was on a weekend. He wasn't working, and I'm not sure why, but he gave my wife his number, his personal number, and said, if you have troubles, give me a call. And my wife, because, she's going through crazy stuff now. She's got a husband who's a quadriplegic. She's got 2 little kids. She's got all the same worries that I have, just in a different way. And I remember she called him up and said, Nathan's really struggling. He's having a hard time with whatever it was. And he dropped everything on a Saturday morning and drove out to our house and made a house call and came in as like the head neurosurgeon for the whole hospital. Came out to our house and spent an hour with us and gave personal attention that helped me and it helped Heather. And that's just the kind of guy he was. I'm not saying every doctor needs to do house calls, but that made a huge difference in our lives. And we're still friends with him today.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
That's amazing. And you did bring up something, because there's another part of the story. It wasn't just a ski accident. I was reading a little bit and I remember your story that there was a little bit more to that became another big trial. And just wondering if you could go into that a little bit and some of the things that you learned from that experience.
Yeah. So after that neck break, when I was up snow skiing, so 13 months later, I had gotten back most of the use of my upper body. It'd been very hard, but we worked really hard. Because it was a team effort. And I was able to go back to work full time.
Wow.
I had a truck equipped so that I could drive, because I don't drive minivans. You think like paralysis, you think of a van, like automatically, like they go together. And I told her when I was in the hospital and they started to look for vans, I said, no, like you can leave me in here to die, but I am not getting in a minivan. So we figured out a way to make it work. And so I had a truck equipped so I could drive. I was getting healthier and my legs were starting to move just a little bit. Not much at all, but they were starting to move. So in my mind, I will walk again. Like there's no doubt it's going to happen. And we fully believed in it. And I came down with pneumonia that winter, and my lungs aren't as strong as the rest of you guys. And so Heather said we needed to go into the doctor. And I said, I don't want to go back to a doctor. So, but tomorrow, if I'm not feeling better, we'll go. Well, in the middle of the night, my blood oxygen level dropped too low. And I went unconscious in my sleep.
Ooh.
And Heather woke up in the middle of the night and she felt prompted to come wake me up, and she couldn't. So they rushed me into the hospital early in the morning. And I'm laying in the x-ray room. I'm laying on the gurney. They got it kind of propped up behind me, almost sitting with some wedges to get a good x-ray shot of my lungs. And there's just myself, the x-ray tech in the room, and Heather sitting in a chair just outside the door. And I am unconscious still. And I fell off the x-ray table and broke my neck a second time.
Oh man. Yeah.
The second one was a little bit higher up at the C6 level. After that one, I lost the use of my hands. Like I can't move my fingers at all. I can kind of pull my wrist one direction. My triceps, like I can't straighten my arm out, and everything from the chest down. So half of what I'd worked so hard to get back had just been ripped out from under me. But I remember vividly when I came to, they were giving me oxygen. They'd moved me to a different room. I remember it being like the lights off. It was kind of a cold room. And Heather came in and she told me what had happened, that I had broke my neck again. And we were being rushed to a different hospital for surgery. And that was with Dr. Jutsi coming into the picture. And as she told me everything about the neck break, I told her 3 words. And it wasn't, "I love you." I looked at her and I could barely even talk. And I just said, "Bring it on."
Love it.
Now, and I don't say that in like some prideful way, "Bring it on, I can handle it." I remember thinking, it's okay. You know, we've done this before. We can do it again. We know how to do it. We can do it faster. We better, I'll get back whatever movement I lost real quickly, because we've got this. We know what to do.
Right.
It's better it happened to me twice than someone else once. And so we took off on that. And that was our attitude immediately. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to walk, and give it a week or two. We'll be back to where we were. The problem was, after a few months, I still wasn't getting back the movement I wanted. I got a little bit stronger over that couple weeks in certain areas, but I was not getting back everything that I needed. I could, however, on a good day, I can move my middle finger just a little bit. Not sure what I'll use that for, but on a good day, I can do that. And I learned real quickly, and this goes back to kind of what I've talked about before, is that first neck break, though it was hard mentally, because I had to figure out how to push through it, but that was a very physical struggle, because my body was adjusting to all these different changes. The second one was probably harder, not physically, but mentally, because I became mentally paralyzed. And that's when I had to come to grips that there's a very good chance I'm not going to walk in this life. And all these things that I want to do from a standing position aren't going to happen that way.
Right.
And I wanted to be the one to go hike up in the mountains with my son and teach him to fish in upper mountain lakes outside of McCall, like my dad taught me. Yeah. And I want to be the one to dance with my daughter when she's old enough to get married. And those aren't going to happen that way. And that's hard for anyone to grasp and to realize. Now, fast forward. All right. This last May, my daughter got married. And I'd been thinking about this for a long time, because when she was a little girl and I was in a wheelchair, usually always on Sunday, but other days of the week, she would come up and she would hold my finger and we would dance, and she would spin around in circles and we'd switch hands, and she'd go around in a chair, and she loved it. She really loved it. And I always sat there excited and dreading the day that she got married, because I wanted to dance with her, and I knew she needed that. And I didn't want to say, "No, I won't dance with you in front of everybody," because now she has to sit on my lap and I have to try and move around. And is it neat? Is it fun to do? Yes. But half of that time that I'm doing that, it's a really big struggle for me mentally, whether I'm dancing with my wife or my daughters. So when she got married last May, we did it, and it was fun. I brought her out a little rose. We have everybody in this big barn watching us. We got the song going, and I come out and give her this rose, and she holds my hand and she spins in circles around me, and then she sits down on my lap, and I start to spin around, and I run over her dress with my chair. and I can't get off of it. And I'm trying to move around, and pretty soon I can't spin anymore because it's all tangled up in my front tire. And I know that everyone who was watching that was just bawling.
Yeah.
Because it is sweet and it's really neat. But there is still, to be honest, there's a part of me that was really struggling that whole dance. And that can be very hard to grasp, even though I still got to do something I really wanted to do. It wasn't the way I wanted to in my mind. And that's always a hard thing for many of us to deal with, is how do you fully enjoy the moment you're in when you're still kind of wishing it was a little bit different? I don't have a great answer to that because it's something I still deal with, but I know that I can't rob others of those experiences just because I may struggle with it. Because I'll bet everyone who was watching that, it was more special to them seeing me in a wheelchair dance with her than it would have been if I was standing.
Oh yeah.
And I've learned in my life that I need to allow opportunities to happen that will touch other people's lives. Because after that second neck break, I ended up, a few years later, I became a motivational speaker, and then I and I'm not saying it was quick. That was a big struggle to figure that out. And then when I start traveling around the country, flying on my own to New York City and trying to get a taxi and trying to get around that city on your own.
Oh yeah.
When you're quadriplegic, and I'm not in an electric wheelchair. So I'm like in this manual wheelchair trying to push around. It's a nightmare. That is not a wheelchair accessible city.
No.
But I've learned that two of the hardest things, this is my two, and I can't move my fingers. Two of the hardest things that you can do in this life is, one is to ask for help, and the other is to accept it. And I've learned that there's certain things I can do on my own, but I ask for help anyway, because it saves my energy for other things. So yes, I could probably make it up that hill, but it'll take me a while pushing it. But if it's early in the morning and I need that energy throughout the day, I'll just ask someone walking by, can you help push me up that hill?
Yeah.
And I've also learned that by doing that, that person pushing me, I just gave them an opportunity that helped change their day.
Yeah.
They now got to serve someone who couldn't really serve themselves. And so it helps everyone in the process. And so I'll admit, there are a few times that I will specifically, even though I know I can do something and it's not even that hard, I'll ask someone to help me because I know it'll help them.
You know what?
And,
Oh, I'm sorry for cutting you off. Go ahead.
oh, you're good. Go for it. That's something that I've learned to do, and I'll purposely pick out certain people that I know may be struggling or having a hard time, and I'll ask them to help me because it helps them take their mind off their own worries and focus on someone else.
Yes, I can attest to that. You bring up New York City. I was there for a decade. And I remember New York, you're always in a rush. The energy is ridiculous over there. And I was heading off to something, it was all right event, but I noticed an individual in a wheelchair and he asked for help. And I'll never forget it because it was
probably me.
Yeah, not unless you're African American, but but he was in the chair and he needed to get across Second Avenue, and so he asked me to let him down and help him do that. And I just remember how I wasn't in a hurry or anything, but how it helped me to reprioritize everything that I was doing that day. And for a moment, it really helped me think of what was important. And that reaching out for help, it was not an inconvenience at all. And it turned out to be it was that one's greatest blessing. There's no doubt about that. And so to your point, that is hard to allow people to help, but oh my goodness, what it does to the individual on the inside. And I can definitely attest to that. Gary, I'm sure you had plenty of those types of experiences as well, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think if there's one thing that's so interesting to me is so much of the healing process is getting out of your own mind and your own needs, and part of that is allowing other people to help, when you're down or when you're hurt. And I think a big part of it is, this is going to lead me into my next question. I think a big part of that is just showing up for the job. You know what I mean? So many people are so concerned that they're not going to say the right thing or do the right thing or whatever, when so much of it, you just need someone there, but anyway, what I wanted to kind of ask you next is, so we started this podcast and you were talking about being paralyzed, whether it's physical, mental, in life, and not being able to move forward. And speaking from someone who's, I mean, you've overcome some just incredible obstacles. And I think we've all been in those positions in life where we do feel like we can't move. And to start making progress is so incremental and so small and difficult. What advice would you give someone, or what did you do? What were strategies that you employ just to get that ball moving just a little bit? Because as we know, the bigger the problem, the bigger the mass, the harder it is to get going. What do you do? And first of all, you say you don't have great answers, but you obviously do.
Yeah,
they may not be perfect. They may not be the answer that you want, but you've got great answers. And so what would you say?
I think I think I wrote some of this stuff in my a book that I wrote a few years ago, but I think some of the things that help me when I'm feeling stuck is to quit looking at the big picture. It's to start looking at, all right, what are a few things I need to do to go back to the very first thing we talked about? How do I progress? Right. What do I need to do to start progressing? And now your big picture is still your goal, but you got to bring it all the way back to the little teeny things. And I remember when I was learning to push a wheelchair, and I'm in the hospital and I'm still mostly paralyzed. I'm wrapped with all that. My blood pressure is terrible. I've got all these wraps all over my body, and still have like a fever and all this, and I have hardly any strength. And I've got kind of gloves like this on to help push, to give me grip. And they put me in this hallway in the hospital, and they're like, all right, we need to get to the end of the hallway. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't even push across my room, and you want me to go down this hallway? And this isn't even like on carpet. This is like just flat linoleum. I mean, it's easy stuff to push on.
Yeah.
But I have no strength. Like physically, I can't move. And I remember I could barely move my arms. I wish we had like a full screen on me of what it looked like. But I remember looking down that hallway and I'm like, I can't do that. And I hate using the word can't, but I was like, I can't do that. And so I would look down at the tiles on the ground, and they had different colored kind of tiles as you move down the hallway. And I think, all right, I got to get to that tile. And when I say that, I mean that tile's like 2 feet away. Like it's not down the hallway, it's right there. And I'm like, I don't even think I can do that. And I would sit there and I would just like trying to push my chair, and it would just rock. It wouldn't even go forward because I couldn't get the strength. And I kept just kind of working at that, and they wouldn't let me go. I had a good therapist who's like, keep going. And I'm like, you're watching me, I can't go. But they believed in me enough. And I think that's one principle right off the top is you have to surround yourself with a superior support system. Mm-hmm. there are people that bring you down and doubt you, you need to start limiting your time with them or get rid of them. You need to surround yourself with the best people who believe in you and are going to build you up and are going to be there to carry you when you need it. There's no time in your life to waste on others. So start focusing on that. Surround yourself with a great support system.
Yeah.
And so I had that. I had great therapists. I had great family. So it was just, now it's me. I've got to do my part. And I remember slowly being able to push inch by inch until I could cross that line. And then once you get to that line, you would set your next goal. And this is nothing new. We've heard this throughout our lives, but I was living it then. Like I was living it the most pure form you possibly can. And so when I think now in my life where I can push past that line easy now, is when I need to move forward and I'm getting stuck, I have to set little goals each day, because I'm one who I can beat myself up a lot. And in the morning, I can wake up and have a lot of negative thoughts. Or when I go to bed, I'm like, I did not accomplish anything what I thought I was going to. So if I set up little things, so for instance, say 3 things, this is one of my goals recently, was I'm going to read my scriptures every day. I didn't put a time limit on it. I just said I'm going to read them every day. I am going to, I'm working on learning another language. So I'm going to spend some time on learning another language every day. And I am going to, I'm going to do some type of exercise, 5 days a week or whatever I'd set it at. I had nothing to do with business stuff. Now you can obviously set business stuff or whatever your other goals are, but those are my 3 things that I set for a while, so that when I went to bed at night, I could at least say, I did those things that I said I was going to do. And to me, that was progress. That was a step or a push forward.
Yeah.
And then I can add on a little bit more as you go. And then you start gaining that speed to move forward. So I think it's take it back to the purest form you can. What are the most important things to you? And to me at that time, it was my spirituality is key. My health is key. And at that point, it was, we were going to be doing a lot of trips to other countries, and I wanted to be able to communicate better. And so that was my extra little deal. And I can tell you that when I do those 3 things, I go to bed happier and I wake up happier. And you always have to have something positive about your life that you've done. And those don't take a lot of time, but they're meaningful to you. Where I may go out and I can business, I may be able to get $50,000 in donations, and that is so cool. But if I didn't read my scriptures that day, I feel like I let myself down. Yeah. So what are the things that you can get out of your life that don't make you feel like you're letting yourself down or others? Get rid of those quickly, and then you can start focusing on the rest.
It's a testament of what I had read about you on you. Yeah, I believe you're asked 2 things, and that was what matters most are hope and progress. And I'm glad Gary asked that question, just because you can see that is a testament to your life and everything that you're doing. And with that, what you're doing with your life since that time, I want to pivot a little bit, because there you are with your shirt, share the hope.
Oh yeah.
And I want to talk about that, because when I see the ex-president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, wearing a Boise State University hat, because you're taking wheelchairs all over the world, the impact that you've had on countries, on people, on high-powered leaders is immeasurable. I just wondered what you could tell us about what you do with Share the Hope and share that enthusiasm with the audience here.
Well, there's a lot to that story. And I can't get into all of it, but to summarize it quickly, again, back to my wife. I think my wife's behind everything. But it was 4 years ago, she had an idea for us to do something big to help others. And so our family rode bicycles. We have 4 kids now. So we were able to have, after the 2 neck breaks, we were able to have 2 more daughters.
Wow.
And now that's a whole different podcast on how
Yes.
a quadriplegic has kids. Because I know everybody wonders that, well, how did you do that? Well, those are different slides. And so we've got great kids. And so from her idea, when she brought it to the family, that she wanted to ride bicycles from Bend, Oregon at the ski resort where I broke my neck down to Los Angeles, Santa Monica Pier. That's 1,200 miles. And from when that idea came up, 4 months later, we were actually on the road riding bikes down along the California coast. And we're not bike riding family. Like, get that straight. Like, we're an athletic family.
Right.
But when this idea came up, we only had 3 bikes and 2 of them had flats. And there's 6 of us in the family. So I do have a hand bike that I had. And so in 12 days, we rode 1,200 miles as a family.
Oh,
Wow.
that's amazing.
So nobody rode the whole 1,200. We did it kind of relay style. So we'd all help out and cover for each other and make it work. And we raised $42,000 for wheelchairs, and we gave it to another foundation that helps give out wheelchairs. And then a month later, we're back home. I go to a Boise State football game. And while there, I was out of my chair for a halftime. And we went to put me back in my chair and it was gone. Someone had stole my wheelchair.
You gotta be kidding me.
Stole my wheelchair at a Boise State football game. But that was awesome. That was really cool. As much as it was inconvenient, I'm sitting on my wife's back and she's piggybacking me around trying to find a chair, and we have no place to set me down. And it made like national news in different ways, because who steals somebody's wheelchair?
Exactly.
And we've never found it, but that was an eye opener to me, because all of a sudden, like, if you're in America and you get injured, you can get a chair. Like, you're not going to go with it. You may not get the $30,000 electric chair you want, but you can get a chair.
Right.
And I guess I'd never have that real moment. As I was sitting on her back, it hit me again, like, crap. Like, if I don't have a chair, I don't have anything. Like, I can't go anywhere unless somebody else takes me. And because of that, and my wheelchair being stolen, it kind of got the ball rolling, that we ended up starting this nonprofit called Share the Hope. And in the last 3 years since we've started it, we've been able to give out over 2,000 wheelchairs. And next year we'll be giving out another 1,000.
That's awesome.
And we've been able to do many local projects, from helping build ramps and sidewalks in people's yards to helping people get accessible vehicles that they can drive. And we're in a process now in the Treasure Valley here in the Boise area of trying to build a different abilities park.
Wow.
Based around helping anyone who has mobility issues, and have all different cool stuff we won't get into right now. But so, yeah, we've been able to travel in the last 3 years. We've created, and we take people on these trips with us. So each trip we're giving out a minimum of 280 wheelchairs.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
And we take between 25 and 35 people and families with us so they can experience it. And we do kind of a humanitarian trip / vacation.
Yeah.
So, we're we're in people's homes, lifting them up off the ground, putting them in their first wheelchairs. We're having big deals. We got 100 people coming to get wheelchairs, but then you're also going to the beach and you're going zip lining and you're seeing the culture. And so we create these trips and people pay to come on them, and it's really, really fun. And so we've created, I think, 8 or 9 trips now. And we've been in 7 different countries on 3 different continents just in the last 3 years. And it has been an amazing ride. Like 2 years ago, I got to go to the top of Machu Picchu. We were delivering wheelchairs in Peru, and I'm like, if I'm going to Peru, I'm going to Machu Picchu. We're going to figure this out. And sure enough, and that's a whole nother story of how they got me to the top of Machu Picchu.
Wow.
So it's exciting, it's fun, and it changes, and you just have to be willing to change. A lot of people are so scared and fearful of change, when typically, almost always, after something big in your life changes, it's for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts you in a different path that you wouldn't have gone on if you didn't. So I know that if I hadn't been paralyzed, there's no way I'd be doing this. This wouldn't be a passion. There's thousands of people whose lives wouldn't be changed in the way we're doing it if I hadn't been in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, I haven't given you guys a whole lot of time to talk.
No, this is awesome. This is a way it's meant to be.
Like, you guys probably have all these questions and they're not getting marked off. But I want to, let me maybe get towards the end with this thought that I've had recently. This is something that's been on my mind a lot. And I think it's a really important principle, whether you're religious or not. But throughout the scriptures, there's some scriptures that say this directly, or they're kind of hinting towards it. It's about that the Lord takes weak things and makes them strong. And there's many different scriptures that are kind of like that, worded a little bit differently. And people often allude to that with me. They're like, Nathan, you have taken your weakness and you've done great things with it. And I've never liked the way that was said to me. And so recently I was on a different podcast and someone was asking me a question about that. And they were saying the same thing. Nathan, man, you've taken your weakness. You're kind of like you've taken your negative and you've made it a positive. And I sat there thinking as I was on the podcast, and I said, I don't think that's true. I don't think what you're saying is right. And it kind of took him back a little bit, because you don't want to look like a dork on your own podcast. But I said, I look at that differently now. I look at me being paralyzed, me being in a chair, as my strength, not my weakness. This is my strength. My weakness is, what am I willing to do with it? Am I willing to go the extra effort to do something with this, to help others, to do something with this, to make something greater? And I think that's what all of us, we always think of, well, I have cancer, or I've lost a child, or I'm addicted to something, as our weakness. What if that's our strength? What if you flip that around? This is your strength, that you've been addicted to something. And it's very hard, just like it's hard for me to be in a chair. But what are you going to do with that now? That's your weakness if you don't do something with it.
Wow. I love
So
that.
we always think you're weak to be strong, but it's more like, you've got your strong. Are you going to be weak? And I hope we're all great enough to stand up and say, no, I won't be weak. I'm going to take my strength and I'm going to blow it up, man. We're going to
That's cool.
Yeah. I can't contain my amplitude right now. I just can't. Gary's much more reserved than I am, but I guarantee that crazy smile, right?
No, that's extremely powerful. That's so powerful. It really is. And it's just a minor adjustment, but there's so much to that. I think that's something I'm going to be thinking about for a while.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt, no doubt. I've got to ask you though. I know that I can't believe how fast time is flying. I'm looking at the clock; it's blowing my mind. I'm wondering, would you be willing to come back with Heather on the show and talk about that? Because it would be fantastic to get that perspective. And if not, then I'm going to get friends that I'm sure she knows in Bend, Oregon, to get on her case. So,
oh yeah, she would do it. She's fun to talk to, and she's got a whole different perspective that I can't understand of what she goes through. A lot of people always look at me and they're like, man, Nathan, I'm kind of the one in the light. When we go in a room, people look at me because I'm the one in the wheelchair.
Right.
And I get that. But the things she has gone through and overcome probably just dwarfs the stuff that I've had to go through. But everyone looks at me. I'm the one up on stage, or I'm the one do whatever. She's extraordinary. So yeah, I'm sure she would be willing to come on.
Love it. Well, we both want to thank you for your time. It's just been a pleasure. So thank you. Thank you for making that time for us.
No problem. I think I love doing it. Anything I can do to help.
Perfect. Hey, thank you. And we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Nathan.